Love this podcast? Support this show through the Acast supporter feature. It's up to you how much you give, and there's no regular commitment. Just hit the link in the show description to support now.
Hi everyone and welcome to the Cognitive Recalibration podcast. As always, I'm your host Shravan. We have Tyrone sitting somewhere, not in the same room as me.
Yes, I'm here in a different room.
And it's basically because we just couldn't be bothered meeting in the same room.
There's no reason for it.
No real reason. Didn't want to go out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're midsummer here in Melbourne, so it's pretty hot these days. I think we had like...
Midsummer.
Yeah.
Like the movie Midsummer.
Like that movie. Have you seen that movie?
No.
I've heard some people say it's really good, and some people say it's like the most traumatic cinematic experience of their life. So I don't know what to think of it. But anyway.
Just like Australian Midsummers.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's what it's like. So we're going to be talking about the movie Scream. I was going to let out a scream, but I thought that would be pretty uncomfortable for people listening with headphones on. So I won't do that. But Scream, or essentially Scream 5, isn't it? But it's titled as Scream because that's what they do these days. Like when they do it's kind of like a continuation but also a reboot. And there's a bit of commentary about that in this movie, which we can talk about. But they did that with Halloween. They called it Halloween, and it was just like a continuation of Halloween. It was like Halloween 6 or whatever it was. And they've done it with some other movies too, haven't they? Where they just call it the same name.
Yes, but I can't think of any off the top of my head at the moment. I'm sure it's happened.
Yeah, so you're going to get a review from two different points of view because I haven't seen a single Scream movie apart from this one. So before I watched this one, I hadn't seen any of them. And you have seen some of them before watching this one.
Yeah, but I don't know how I remember them because I haven't seen them recently. So I also don't remember most of it.
This one is not directed by Wes Craven. So all the previous ones were directed by him, if I'm not wrong. This one is directed by the duo that directed Ready or Not, a movie which I haven't seen, but I've heard it's pretty good. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen that either.
Yeah, people said that's got elements that this movie has in terms of or that Scream movies have in terms of thriller / horror / comedy elements. So everyone was saying they're well suited to direct this movie. It is starring a whole bunch of new people, but there is a returning cast. So it's kind of like the Force Awakens of Scream movies.
Mm.
So it's got, in terms of
what do they call it in the movie? It's a requel.
Yeah, it's a requel.
Yeah.
So Courtney Cox, David Arquette, and Neve Campbell return. So Neve Campbell is like the main character, right, in the other Scream movies.
Yeah.
And like all Scream movies, there's a murder mystery that's happening. So there's Ghostface has returned, and Ghostface is committing murders, and it's up to the main cast to figure out who it is. And it kind of, I guess, it follows the structure of all the other Scream movies where it's someone within their friend group. So there's a group of friends, and it's like someone, and you have to guess who it is.
Yeah.
In terms of box office, it's done 90 million worldwide, and it had a budget of 24 million. And I was reading somewhere that this is, since the first Scream movie, this is the most profitable Scream movie, budget versus returns wise. So it's done pretty well. And it was actually because Spider-Man No Way Home was on a bit of a run. It was like number one every single week until this came out. So this was the first movie to break the streak of Spider-Man No Way Home, at least for 1 week, and then it was Spider-Man No Way Home again.
What you're telling me is this movie's better than Spider-Man No Way Home.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Yep.
Objectively, based on the numbers.
Objectively. And subjectively as well. Your opinion is that this is better than Spider-Man No Way Home.
Yeah, I guess objectively and subjectively. Anyway, we can jump into our thoughts on the movie. So positives and negatives wise. Going into this, like, I didn't know much about it. I didn't really watch. I think I even watched any of the trailers. Like the only trailers that I watched were ads on YouTube, like those 15-second ads. So I didn't really know much about the movie, and I hadn't seen any of the previous Scream movies, so I didn't really know much about the premise either. And I had a good time with it because it was kind of not it's not really a horror. It is horror, but it's not really. It's not like a typical horror movie. And I guess this applies to all Scream movies, but it's like a combination of multiple genres. So there are comical elements to the movie. There are horror elements to the movie. There is a mystery element to the movie. And then there's also like this societal commentary stuff as well. Like it's in this one, it's more just about movies. I guess in the previous ones, it is about movies as well. Like they talk more about horror movies.
They're all meta and yeah, that's what a Scream movie is. It's like a murder mystery, but it's like a commentary on it, essentially a commentary on horror movies and stuff like that. So it's like a comedy as well as a horror movie.
Yeah. So in this one, there is a commentary. It's not particularly on horror movies. It's kind of directed at just the movies in general, I guess, or like the recent trend in movies where there's been a lot of what they call re-quels, which are like reboots, but they're also sequels. And as people who talk about those movies a lot, I found it pretty entertaining because we discussed like Star Wars, Marvel, all that stuff, right? So, and all of that is basically like re-quel. Maybe not Marvel, but Star Wars definitely is like re-quel stuff. So no, I found that stuff really. It was mostly. I found the whole movie quite entertaining. I think that's what I would say. I found it pretty enjoyable, pretty breezy. It wasn't too long or anything. It didn't feel too long. There wasn't any elements that I felt like they were dragging or anything. The main characters that they introduce into the movie, the new characters were, I guess I was invested enough in their stories, so it wasn't, there were some heartfelt moments as well between the main character and her sister. Overall, I just had a pretty good time in terms of, those are my positives. Did you have anything else?
No, it was an enjoyable movie. You know, the kills are pretty good. It's pretty gory and brutal.
I'm not sure if all the Scream movies kind of like slasher movies as well, I'm guessing. So there's a bit of gore involved with them. Yeah. So
this is probably like as gory as they get, I guess. They're pretty gory, the old ones as well. But yeah, this is it delivers on all those promises that the old ones have. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but it's enjoyable for what it was. If you go in expecting what you think it's going to be, then it's going to give you what you expect, essentially.
Yeah, and I didn't have any expectations, and I thought it was fine. So even as someone who hadn't seen any of the previous Scream movies, I felt like obviously there are some return characters and stuff, and some backstory which you probably understand better if you had watched the previous Scream movies. But for me, because I hadn't seen them, I could still follow the story, and I could understand most of the references. Like I think there were some clear like visual references and stuff to like the previous movies, which I could tell it's like just the way it was shot and stuff. I could tell that it was a reference, even though I hadn't even seen the movie. Would you recommend it's better for people to watch the previous Scream movies before watching this one? Because obviously if you watch this one, because I know the spoilers from the previous ones now that I've watched this one. So does it make sense? Is it good to like go back and actually watch them all in? Is it worth it to go back and watch them?
I think it's probably more of a full experience, I guess. So
yeah,
you can watch it without watching the previous ones, but if you want the complete cinematic experience, maybe it's better to go back and watch at least the first two.
Yeah, so the first one came out in 1996, so I didn't realize it was that old. And obviously we were way too young to watch it back then. I think I just missed the whole Scream phenomenon. Like I never really got into it because maybe when the first one came out, I was too young to watch it. And then the sequels, they weren't as popular as the first one, were they? They were okay, but they weren't as popular as the first one. So I never really got into it. And in general, I guess we didn't watch that much horror growing up. from watching this movie, I think it's almost kind of underrated. Like, not many people actually talk about Scream, but it seems like it's a pretty unique concept.
I think there's probably in horror circles it's more widely recognized, but if you don't watch that many horror movies, you probably don't really, you don't really know about it that much.
But since we've started doing this show, we have watched a few more horror movies, and we've got across the horror genre a bit more now. And I wouldn't say like it's scary. Like, I didn't find it that scary as such. Like, there's a couple of like suspenseful moments, but it's not going to keep you up at night. It's not that sort of horror movie. Maybe in the moment there are some scares, but it's not like a haunting type of movie.
Oh, it depends if you find slasher movies scary, I guess.
Yeah, I guess it's like a similar type of movie to like Halloween, which is also a slasher movie, except it actually kind of follows the similar kind of rules as well. In Halloween, Mike Myers, for some reason he just never dies. Doesn't matter what you do to him. Like, you shoot him in the head and somehow he still comes back. Similar to that, I guess. So there's some like obvious plot holes, which you just have to go with. Negatives wise, I didn't have too much. I guess the final reveal of who who was doing the murders was okay. It wasn't like mind blowing, I wouldn't say. Like, it was okay. I can think of other characters that it might have actually been better, but what they did was fine. Is that what you felt, or did you think it was like...
I thought it was okay.
Yeah.
Like, it did blow my mind, but it was just like, yeah, that's all right.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's probably what I expected a little bit.
There's clues throughout the movie, but there was one particular scene, and we can get into it in spoilers, where I was like, the person it ends up being was at least one of two people. And then from there, I could just figure it out, because it was kind of unravels pretty quickly after that anyway. I thought the returning cast were good for what they were in for. So I thought they were pretty good. They kind of used like they're almost like side characters. They're not really in it that much.
Yeah, they use sparingly.
Yeah, they kind of just join, and so it's not really their movie at all. It's more about the new cast, and they're kind of just in the background. So I think that's probably where it kind of differs from Force Awakens, because I think like Force Awakens definitely leveraged off the existing characters more than this one. But yeah, that was it really. I thought it was pretty well directed. If you like horror movies and you like Scream, then I think you should definitely watch it. Usually January movies aren't good. Historically, January is not a good month for movies, or at least theatrically released movies, but this is definitely an exception. This was the first movie that released this year, I think, or like one of the first.
One of the new ones released this year.
Yeah, and it was... I really wasn't expecting much, but yeah, it surprised me. I thought it was pretty good. Best movie so far this year, but it's also the only movie we've seen so far this year.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, actually, we watched The Kingsman this year. Even though it released last year, we watched it this year. It's better than that, I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can jump into spoilers. So if you haven't seen Scream or Scream 5, go back and maybe watch all the Scream movies, or watch this movie and then come back and listen to our spoilers. Oh, there's a couple of things I found interesting in the first scene. So firstly, it starts off, I'm guessing the first Scream movie also starts off in a similar fashion, where there's a girl in a house and she gets a phone call, and then the phone call's from the killer and she has to follow certain guidelines, and then she gets murdered. Is that what happens?
Yes.
Yes. Except in this one,
Drew Barrymore.
Yeah, that's right. It's Drew Barrymore in the first one. In this one, she does not die. I'm surprised that she does not die, because she gets stabbed quite a bit. Within the universe, there's a series of movies called Stab, which are essentially reference to Scream, right? It's like the same thing, but in the universe, it's called Stab.
They make a movie out of the events of the first Scream movie,
which is kind of a more fitting title than even Scream, because there are screams in this, but they're like more screams are like pain when people are getting stabbed and stuff. There's more stabbings than screams, I think. In the first scene, there's a killer. She gets a call and she has to answer trivia questions about the first Stab movie. What I found interesting was she obviously lives in like a nice home, and it's obviously pretty high tech, because she's got like smart doors and stuff, like smart locks and stuff, so she can control the locks with her phone, and so it's like a modern home. But she still has a landline, which I just found pretty interesting.
Yeah. I don't know. Some people still have landlines, even
Yeah.
here in Australia. Yeah, even though no one uses them.
Yeah, we don't have a landline anymore because we just never used it. I think older people still do because maybe they just find it more convenient. She gets a call on the landline, and then obviously her smart lock system doesn't work very well because it keeps unlocking itself at one stage.
Oh, no, I think the other person has access to the system, so they keep unlocking it.
That's right. Yeah, because they hack into the the phone. So Ghostface gets in, he stabs her, but she doesn't die. So she gets severely injured and gets taken to hospital. And she's the main character's sister, younger sister, and the main character then gets introduced and her boyfriend gets introduced. And then they come back to this town. What's the town called?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's only started with W. It's the same town that the first one was in. So David Arquette, he's now he was a sheriff in the town, and now he's retired, right?
Yeah, well, forced retirement, isn't it? He says later, yeah.
They go through this initial thing of like, they think it's someone within the friends group. The younger sister has like a group of 5 or 6 friends, and it's 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
How do we always end up recording when your alarm goes off?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It tends to happen a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they go meet David Arquette, and he's like, first you have to suspect their love interest because he's always like the one you don't know that well, and he's probably the killer. But then they brush that off, and then there's a series of like attacks. So the main character gets attacked once in the hospital, which is pretty funny actually because she's talking to him, and then he just comes out of nowhere and attacks her.
Yeah.
Then there's like the current sheriff or like the deputy sheriff or whatever. Her son is one of the sister's friends. So he's like in the friend group and he gets killed. His mum gets killed first and then he gets killed in broad daylight as well. His mum gets killed like in the front yard and he gets killed in the house. I thought that whole sequence was in the house where he's just walking around and he's like opening doors and stuff. They do that a couple of times where like they zoom in to the door.
And you think he's going to be behind the door. Yeah.
But he's not. And he ends up just being behind him, I think. He just turns around and it's just behind him. And he gets stabbed and dies. Are those the only... Oh, they kill some random guy, don't they? There's some random guy at the pub or something they get into a fight with and then...
Yeah. Yep.
It turns out that he's related in some way to the instance from 20 years back.
The original, yeah.
So everyone that is involved in the murders are in some way related to the original Scream or the original stab. The main character turns out to be the daughter of the killer in the first movie. Is that right? Or one of the killers in the first movie.
Yes.
And that's why they bring her back because they somehow find out that she's related. There's a whole lot of attacks. I think the sister gets attacked almost again, like in the hospital, but then they find him, and that's where David Arquette dies. And I thought that was a bit, he's like, you always have to shoot them in the head or whatever, and he goes back, and he's going to die then, because he's going back by himself.
Yeah. It felt like a very obvious death scene.
Yeah.
It's kind of, but that's like the re-quel thing, isn't it? Like you have to, you have to kill off one of the main characters.
Yeah. And so in between, there's one character that's like fully into this like re-quel theory, and she's like explaining everything. And there's one scene where she like even talks about other movies. She's like, Star Wars has done it, Jurassic Park has done it, all this stuff, right? And it's also established from like Scream movies that there's always 2 killers. So I thought she would be one of them potentially, but then there was one scene where her and one of the actual killers goes into the basement. And they're like, oh, why'd you come down here by yourself? And they kind of have a bit of an exchange. And they're like, maybe I'm the killer. She's like, no, maybe I'm the killer. And I thought, definitely one of them is the killer.
And I thought that was a weird scene. It's like, why are you talking to each other like this?
Yeah, it didn't make any sense. That character that seems to like have a lot of theories, her brother gets killed as well, doesn't he? Wait, does he die?
No, he survives at the end. No.
Okay, yeah, he doesn't die. His girlfriend dies though. She gets shot in the head.
She does.
Yeah.
She gets like shot in the head.
But yeah, they all end up coming back to the house that the killer was in the original movie. And in between,
Yeah.
so when David Arquette dies, so he calls, what's her name in the movies? Is it Sydney Prescott or something? Sheldon Prescott?
Yeah, that's it.
Sydney Prescott. Yeah.
Sydney Prescott.
So he calls her and he's like, don't come to the town. Like, I don't know why she would anyway, but he's like, don't come to the town. Ghostface is back. And he also texts Courtney Cox. And she comes anyway because she's a reporter and she's covering it for her news channel. And after he dies, Neve Campbell also comes. They all end up in this house. So there's like this house party that's happening. They all come back and then you find out that the killer is one of the people in this house. And it just so happens like all the main friends are in the house anyway. There was a funny scene where the Theory character's brother, he's like trying to escape Ghostface. And he's already like stabbed in the leg or something. And he's just like limping. And then you just see Ghostface coming out of the garage, just running towards him.
Yeah. There's scenes like that in the original as well, which I think it pays homage to.
Yeah.
Where just Ghostface is just running at people.
And there's another scene where she's watching the original stab. And it's like almost the same scene. Like the guy's like watching TV. And she's like, turn around. And then the Ghostface is like actually behind her. So the main killer ends up being actually her best friend and her boyfriend, the main character's boyfriend. So I knew it was probably this sister's best friend because she's one of the people in that basement scene. So I knew it might be her. So it didn't surprise me too much when it was her. Boyfriend, I actually wasn't expecting, but it makes sense that it would be him because they didn't really know who he was. There is a funny scene where...
it was said at the start.
Yeah. Well, he said it right at the start. And then there's a funny scene at the end where, like, Sydney Prescott's, like, going up the stairs and she's, like, shooting each room. Shoots into the room that he's in. He's like, oh, shit, it's Ghostface. like, because Ghostface was, like, behind the door or something and he, like, attacks Sydney. So,
Yeah.
You don't know it's him, like, he's the other killer yet at that stage. But the way he dies is the main character channels her, I guess, inner serial killer and she like stabs him to death like multiple times.
She does a ghost face on him, essentially.
Yeah, and then they shoot them in the face just in case. And the other killer, she has a fight with Sydney Prescott and Courtney Cox. She dies in a pretty horrific way as well because she gets like burnt to death, but she's still alive actually. She gets burnt.
And then her friend.
Yeah.
And
then she gets
her
shot
friend
in the
shoots her, doesn't she?
Yeah, her friend shoots her. Yeah, but they do talk about like. Because the younger sister, she's more into like the recent horror movies, and they call it like elevated horror or something, like smart horror, basically like intelligent horror movies, like The Babadook, which we have seen. She shoots her, and then at the end, she's like, "I still like The Babadook."
Yeah, that was a bit of a random line as well.
But she has a pretty speedy recovery because she gets stabbed like in the back multiple times, and she can still like walk around and stuff.
She's still like, shooting guns and she can't really walk that well, but she can still, beat people up and stuff.
Well, if you get stabbed in the back, surely that's got like lifelong damage. Like surely you wouldn't be able to do a lot of things after you get But yeah, people are always put into situations, like she's put into situations multiple times where she could die. So they also leave her in the hospital by herself at one stage. And she gets attacked again then. But yeah, it's you just got to go with it.
I guess it follows a lot of the horror movie tropes that you normally expect.
Yeah. And there's also a part where she tells her boyfriend to go. And he's like, "No, I won't go." And I think that should have been a giveaway as well. Because if he was a normal person, he probably would have gone. And he also pretended not to know much about the movies. But he was actually like a diehard fan.
He's like a super fan, yeah.
And they do talk about like toxic fans and stuff as well a little bit. And there's a lot of references to The Last Jedi. It was almost like a meta commentary just on The Last Jedi at one stage.
Yeah, a lot of it does reference that.
Yeah, I think that's all we had. Did you have anything else?
I don't have much to say about this movie just because it's a pretty simple movie, I guess. It's Scream. It's just Scream redone, and they did it pretty well. I would say if you like Force Awakens to Star Wars, this is like Scream to Scream.
Yeah. Scream to Scream.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you like, I don't know, if you enjoy like fans just randomly fighting each other for like no reason, if you enjoy observing Last Jedi, all the stuff that happens around Last Jedi, then you might actually have fun with this as well. I've been wanting to talk about this for a while, and we Yeah, we just never had a chance to talk about it. But you know that there's a commercial that comes when you go to the cinema in Australia. There's a commercial that comes before the beginning of a movie, and it's like
Is this the one where the guy holds the other guy's hand?
Yeah, that one. So
Okay, yeah.
I've got a theory about this. You know this theory. So a bit of context. So it's about this guy. He's bought some popcorn. He's walking into the cinema. This commercial is about turning off your phone. So like turn off your phone before the movie starts. That's what the commercial is actually about. But he's like looking at his phone. He's bought some popcorn. He's a bit late to the movie. He's walking down. He walks down like kind of knowing where he's going to sit, but turns out he doesn't because he sits down and he puts his hand out expecting to hold his girlfriend's hand, but he holds this older gentleman's hand, and the older gentleman like gives him a glare, and then he comes to his senses like, oh, I'm not meant to be here, and he finds his girlfriend like sitting 2 rows behind them, and he goes and sits next to her. But I think there's more to this commercial than meets the eye.
No, I don't think there is. But go on.
No, there is. So firstly, this gentleman that walks in, he's of African descent. The guy he sits next to is also of African descent. He looks at him like, he's not like angry. He's kind of like surprised/shocked, his expression. So it could just be like really
I think
bad.
you're overestimating this guy's acting ability. This guy in this
It is a
random ad.
It is a commercial.
Not even...
So it's
it's not even like set up on normal TVs. It's just an ad that they play before movies that Village Cinemas has filmed.
Yes, yeah. So I'm not expecting like an Oscar-worthy performance here, but I'm just going off what I see. So he looks at him and he's like surprised/shocked, and it turns out like this older gentleman's wife is white, and this younger gentleman's girlfriend is also white. So my theory is that this is like a multiverse, and this older couple are time travelers. So like they've traveled back in time and they've met their younger selves.
They travel back in time to watch a movie.
I don't know, like maybe in the future, like there's no cinemas anymore. Like because everyone's cinemas have gone out of business because streaming's too rampant, and it's just not.
And everyone's dead.
Could be that too. Yeah, maybe it's a Days of Future Past situation. Except they just go back in time to watch movies.
They'll try to save the world.
Yeah. So, I think it's that. People who have seen this ad, let us know. But I think I'm onto something here.
I think you're onto nothing.
Yes, I want to know. I want to know if I've got a theory or not. I just want to cover that in this episode. I've been wanting to cover this for like a long time. Any other movies that you've watched recently?
Nah, I haven't watched much recently, actually. It's January, so it's a month of not that much happening in movies, and also lots of delays, so I think February things start to kick off again.
There's a couple of things coming out in February, which we'll be covering. And there's TV shows happening at the moment, Peacemaker and Boba Fett, which we will be reviewing in February. Or I think, when does Peacemaker end? Probably March. Or like late.
I don't know how many episodes there are. I'm not sure how many episodes
I think there's 8. 6 or 8. Okay. Yeah. So we'll be covering those. But next week, we'll be reviewing Ghostbusters Afterlife. Or will we?
Nah. We're just never going to get to it. Nah, we'll review it next week.
Yeah, we can watch it. I was going to watch the anime film, Belle. I'm hearing good things about it. I think, have you only ever watched one anime film, which was Weathering with You?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. And you didn't really like that one?
Not particularly.
Maybe that wasn't a good introduction into the anime films for you. So maybe I think you might actually like this one. It's getting Oscar buzz because it's, apparently pretty good. So I think we will try to cover that one for the podcast. And then in February there's Uncharted, which I keep getting ads for on YouTube. They're doing some pretty aggressive promotion. I either get ads for Uncharted or I get ads for Spider-Man No Way Home for some reason, even though it's like 2 months old now. And Batman is not too far away as well.
It is. It isn't. Yeah. Just a month away, so that should be hopefully good.
Did you hear about the website for the movie? How it's like, to get into the website, you have to solve riddles.
You do all the riddles and stuff. Yeah. And I actually did it ages ago.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Like before all the buzz.
So it's been...
Just came up with a picture of Batman.
Oh, okay. It's been around for a while.
Yeah.
It's not a recent thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And apparently if you like try to cheat, it knows as well. Like if you Google, it knows that you Googled.
Yeah.
Okay then. I guess we'll close it here. Hope you're all staying safe. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Let us know if you've watched Scream. So if you have watched Scream,
Yes.
how do you let us know?
So you can contact us at cognitiverecalibration@gmail.com or just search our name on all other platforms.
Yes, and Spotify has ratings now. I think we mentioned this in one of our previous episodes, but we should mention it more often. So iTunes used to be the only place where you can actually rate podcasts, but now you can do it on Spotify. So I know most of our listeners are actually on Spotify. So yeah, do give us a rating on Spotify because that will make us more discoverable on the Spotify search engine. And obviously the same with iTunes. Yeah, again, thanks for listening. Hope you're all staying safe. And we'll see you next week hopefully for Ghostbusters Afterlife.
We'll see. We'll leave it as a surprise, possibly.
Or we'll just keep doing this for the whole year. We'll forever. We'll just never review it.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Possibly next week.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Thanks, guys. See ya.
See ya.